Hello, hi everybody. Welcome to today's class. We are continuing lectures on introduction to data science uh, and data analysis. Today we want to look at pandas. Okay, um, panda is the uh, library we use two main data structures in data set analysis, which are a series and data frame. Okay. Um, a series is just a one-dimensional version of the different. Yeah, I want you to think about these things as essential objects that related to data analysis. We won't go into data frames today. We're going to focus on series for today. And how do you think of series? You should think of series as a list. Okay, list is one of the most fundamental data structure that you It's all programming languages. So it's the easiest one. What does it have? A list is just contains values, and each value has an index. Okay. So if you want to access a value in the list, you use the index to find it. Okay. So what a series is a series actually contains is a two-column data structure. It's got two columns. One of the columns is the indices of the values. So each value mapped X. So you have two columns. One column is the indices, and then the other column is the values. Okay, so essentially it's a list, but now you kind of extract the values and put them, extract the indices and put them line by line with the values. Okay, so let's talk about series today, and then the next lecture we'll talk about the difference. Right. So, what is how do we series? Well, first of all, you have to import pandas. You import pandas as PD, and then you import NumPy as MP. And this is how you create a series. You just pass a list. So now we've got a list here, and we're passing it to this function, the series function, and of course, it's going to give us a series. But if I run this now, I'm going to get an error, and this is because let's run this command. So just to show you that this is important, if I run that, I get an error. Okay, it tells me that doesn't know what PD is. This first, okay. And having done that, then I think we're good to go now. Can run this again. Fine. Yes, so this is good. So we have our. So if you think of this, if you just forget that we are doing series, you should just look at this list here. This is the first element. It's called index 0. So that's the index here. It's printing the value with the index. This is just what the series does. Okay, so there is nothing special about passing a list in here. You could have passed any other kind of data structure, such as an array or a tuple. Okay, so I'm now replacing the list here with a. Okay, and if I run that, I get the same output. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing now with a tuple. Okay, so this is tuple inside this list, and then I'm going to run that. The output is the same. Okay. Now, I told you that these things here are called the indices. Okay, so this is the index, and if you run this command, it's supposed to give you that. It says that this indices start from 0 and ends at this is the last element, and Python usually doesn't get the last element, so it just stops 1 before, so it's going to be 0 to 5. And this is what you see, what you see here. Okay, so and then the values, the second column just contains the values, and if you run that, you're going to see it's 12, 3. Okay, so I used the form. It doesn't matter if I run with S here as well as it's an array. It doesn't matter whether you use a tuple or use a list or an array. The output here is always going to be an array. Okay, and then size is of course the number of elements in the values. So here we have 6. So if I run that, I should get 6. Okay. Another thing is, of course, how to select elements from your series. And turns out it's not so different from what you do in a list. So here is the second element, just -4 here. So if you run that, get -4. And this is saying we want the second and the fourth, remember? So that's going to be 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's -4 and 9. Okay, it's going to print the 2 rows where you have -4 and 9. Okay, and that's what you have here. You can, the good thing about this, you can print it in any order that you want. If you wanted to have this line first before that line, then you just have to swap the entries. This is what I've done here, and you have that. Okay. So remember, this is saying, okay, pick out the first row 1. So I'm calling the first row to be 0. So the second row is actually 1. So the second row, and then third row will be 2, and the fourth row will be 3. But Python doesn't take the last element, so it's just going to give me the second row and the third row. Okay. Row corresponding to 1 and 2. Okay, and that's what you have here. Okay. Okay, so one thing here is that you can always, the good thing about series is that you can decide to change the index. Maybe the index means something more than just 0, 1, 2 to you. Maybe there are names to, maybe they represent some things and you want to put a name to them. Okay, this is really how you use these things in so you want to call them, you want to name them something different, not just 0, 1, 2, 3, which is what you have in a list. But in this case, you can use any kind of data structure. You can use last, you can use alphabets, you can as well use numbers. Okay, so you can. So let's do that. So we now pass in the value. You can also put an array here, and then when you run that, you're gonna get stuff with. I think a tuple will work here as well. Let's try that. If you put an array here too, the answer is going to be the same. Okay, so now you can also use, so this is another way to do that. You can change the indices from 0 to 1, from 0 numbers to something else that makes more sense to you. Okay, another way to do this is to use dictionary. Okay, so this will be the key for this value here. This will be key. So essentially, you want to think of the index as not indices really. You think of them as keys, that's how you have. So you can use a dictionary here. So this is the key for this one, key for that one, and so on. Then you pass the dictionary into the series as well, and then you have the same thing. Okay. So there are many ways to do the same thing. How the information you have to work with looks like. Okay, and now you can access the first element again. Now you just have to pass in the key or the index, whatever you want to call it. This is essentially what we did before. We take the second row and okay, that gives, and then you can swap their positions here. So you want this to come first, so you have to put B first and then B. Okay. Now, there's something I want to tell you here. So earlier when we did this, remember what happens? We picked out the first and the second. Okay, so it's 1 to 3, but the 3 is excluded, so you pick out 1 and 2 only. The equivalent thing when we change the indices would be to say B to D. But now this is where you really have to think of these things as key rather than just indices. So here it's actually saying the key B and the key D, and it's saying choose keys from B to D. So it's going to choose key B and key C and key D. So you're going to have 3 rows and not just 2 rows as in this case. So I just told 1 year about that. So this is what you have. Okay. And of course, you can always pick out the the elements. This is the first the element occupying with key 0 and the element with key A. They are the same thing. Okay, and you can ask, of course, you can ask if they are the same, and the answer is true. What we can do with that, we know now how to assign values. It's essentially what you do when you're working with a list. Okay, so we can then change this value instead of 12. We want to change it to something that says 30. Okay, so we change that to 30, and we change the other value here to 1. So that's what we do here. And then when you look for these values now, so this is now 30, and this is now 1. Okay, and in fact, if you print your S now, you will see that S has changed. The first element there is no longer 12, but now it's going to be 30. Okay. Now you can filter. So you can filter all the values that are less than or equal to 5. So it's only this one here and that one that you get. Okay. So when you run this command here, you're going to get those 3 rows. Okay. Of course, if you run the ones that are greater than that, okay, so I just got a little bit tired, so I'm going to pause. Okay, so if you wanted to filter the elements that are less than or equal to 5, you just type that, which is greater than, sorry, the values that are greater than 5, you just type the opposite command and you get that. Okay? Of course, if you type elements that are equal to 5, then probably nothing is equal to 5, and you're going to return, sorry, you need to do double, sorry. You can't see an empty list because there's nothing there. Look at here, there's nothing equal to 5 here. Okay? Now let's look at S again. Okay, so now I want to do some maths. Okay, let's do some calculations. You can think of sine, so you can do sine of that. But of course, if you do sine of that, you notice that something looks wrong. Essentially, sine of 30 you expect it to be 0.5, half. But because this is doing stuff in radians, you somehow need to convert it from radians to degree. And this is the command that you use here. Okay, copy it here. And then first of all, convert this to degrees, and then I do that. Okay. Now if you do that, so you have the correct thing here, which is 0.5. Okay, so that's how to make it smaller so that it can fit more in the screen. Okay, you can also divide by 2. Okay, you can divide the values here by 2. So the first one will be 15 when you do that. Okay, so let's do that. So this tells us that our answer is correct. You can square. Okay, again, one, and don't use this. Don't use this. In fact, this is something completely reasonable by that. Okay, so let's do this. We can square things. We know that if you square that number here, we're going to get 900. So if it gives us 900, then we know that we need to get 900. We can do some other more complicated calculations. For example, we can multiply S by 2 and add 1. Remember, the first value there was 30. If you multiply by 2, we get 60 plus 1 is 61. So if you get the first value to be 61, then we know that this is correct. Okay, so you can do that. Okay. Now we can take log as well. Of course, you can do all sorts of things. There's a reason why. Who knows why I've squared this before taking log? Yeah, I'll explain this later. I'll explain that later. So let's continue. You can also add to series. You just add the values. You can do some other addition calculations within combining both a series and an array and a list. It works. Okay. Okay. And of course, you can ask if these two things are, well, these two things are not equal because I'm adding something here. So let me take this out and run this again. So essentially, I want to show you have S, which is our series. You've added a NumPy array, and then you have the same thing, but you're adding a series. to get that. Okay, and I'm claiming that are equal. Okay, so you can switch true, true, true. You can multiply by 2 already. You know that you can do that. Just multiply everything by 2. Okay, so let's look at s again. This is why I had to square things. So you see this value here is -4. You want to take logarithm, you can't take a logarithm of a negative number. So if you didn't know that there was a negative value there and you took a log, this is what? This error here, sort of warning rather than error. It's a warning telling you that something has gone wrong. Essentially, so try to take the log of -4 and then it doesn't make sense. So it returns NA, and it's the way Python represents a number that it doesn't know, or NumPy rather represents a number that it doesn't recognize. Okay. And when you're working with data in general, these things appear. This is why you need to clean your data before you can, clean. And when you have things like this in your null, okay, when you have call it null, when you have a null in your data frame, you need to know where it is. You need to know how to handle it. Sometimes you may need to remove those rows where you have nulls. You need to know how to do it. You can't do it one after the other. You need a command that helps you to take everything out at once. Okay, so first of all, you can use this to find where there is a null. So you just pass. So you take your series and you ask L that is null. So you're asking if there's to give you the rows where you have it. And in this case, we have it only in the first, in this row here, second row. But essentially, the most important command is this one here, where you kind of remove all the rows where you have where this is true. So this command is going to give you true, and if it is true, then it takes away that. Sorry, let me say this again. So this is not null. So this is only going to print you the rows where there is the value is not null. Okay, and then if you do it, it's going to exclude this row here and print everything else. Okay. Okay, essentially that is all. That's all we wanted to do today. Class, we're going to discuss the difference. As I mentioned, this is just a multi-dimensional version of series. Okay, see you in the next class. Bye bye.